Have you ever noticed how the harder you beg for something, the further it seems to slip away? Think about all the times you sat in silence, praying for more money, repeating affirmations late into the night, or picturing a number in your bank account with the hope that somehow the universe might hear you. And yet, instead of drawing closer, it always felt just out of reach, like chasing your own shadow on a sunny day. The reason is simple, though often overlooked every time you ask. You're quietly telling life, I don't have. You might think you're affirming abundance, but what you're actually broadcasting is lack. And the quantum field, the great mirror of reality, can only reflect back to you the vibration you hold. If you stand before the mirror frowning, it will never smile back. Here's the truth. Many people never consider money doesn't live somewhere far away, hidden in the pockets of others or in the deep vaults of the world's banks. Money is not a treasure chest buried in the ground that you must search for. It is energy. It is frequency. It is consciousness made visible through form. And that means you do not chase it. You do not plead for it. You allow it. You pull it by remembering what you already are. Imagine for a moment the way rivers flow. A river never strains to reach the ocean. It doesn't demand the sea to come closer. It simply moves naturally, with the pull of gravity, trusting that the path carved before it will lead it home. In the same way, abundance flows when you release the effort of begging and instead align with the natural current of life. Most of us were taught to believe that if we ask long enough, if we knock hard enough, eventually the door of prosperity will open. But that door never really existed. The only barrier is the illusion that you and money are separate. The moment you see through that illusion, something extraordinary happens. You stop being the one who begs at the door, and you realize you were standing inside the house all along. Money is not waiting to be convinced. It doesn't respond to pleading or desperate affirmations. It responds to coherence, to alignment, to the silent knowing within you that says, I am already whole. I am already connected to the flow of life. When that knowing takes root, abundance begins to show up, not as a reward, but as a reflection. Think of it like tuning a radio. The air around you is filled with countless signals, countless stations playing different songs. You don't create those signals when you turn the dial. They were already there, waiting. But until you tune your receiver to the right frequency, you cannot hear the music. Money is no different. The frequency of lack is like static. You hear noise. You feel agitation. You sense the gap. But the moment you tune into abundance, the music is clear, the flow is natural, and opportunities appear effortlessly. You see, it was never about finding the perfect affirmation or the secret ritual. It was never about saying the right words in the right order so that the universe might finally grant your wish. It has always been about the state of being you hold as you speak those words. Do they carry the vibration of, I don't have, or do they carry the vibration of, it is already here, and I am one with it? The quantum field, this living intelligence, does not respond to the surface of your words. It responds to the essence of your state. And when you truly grasp this, the need to ask falls away. You no longer beg a distant universe for scraps of wealth. Instead, you settle into the quiet truth that you and abundance are not two things. You are one. So the invitation today is simple. Stop asking. Start aligning. Stop repeating to yourself that you are missing something, and begin to embody the truth that you are already connected to everything you seek. Like the river flowing to the sea, you were never meant to strain or beg. You were meant to move with grace, to trust, and to allow abundance to meet you where you stand. 1. Money as energy. Crystallized consciousness. There's a moment in life when you realize that what you thought was solid has always been fluid. For many years, I treated money as if it were a rock, heavy, scarce, difficult to move, something I had to fight for, I carried the weight of it in my chest, feeling as though I was forever pushing a boulder uphill, always close to losing my grip. Perhaps you've felt that same burden. The fear of bills, the endless cycle of waiting for the next paycheck, the quiet shame of never having enough. But money, in its true nature, is not a rock. It is closer to water, closer to light, closer to breath. It is energy moving, crystallized attention made visible in the world. Every dollar that passes through your hands is not just paper. It is the condensed form of someone's focus, someone's creativity, someone's contribution. When you look at it that way, the story changes. It stops being an enemy you must capture and becomes an ally, a messenger carrying the imprint of human consciousness. Think about it when you pour yourself wholeheartedly into a project, when you give your full attention to crafting, building, serving, or solving. What you are doing is shaping energy into form. You are taking the invisible and making it visible, and money is one of the ways that form circulates back to you. It is not a bribe, not a prize, not even a measure of your worth. It is the echo of the energy you've released into the world, returning in a form you can use. The problem comes when we forget this, when we cling to money as if it is separate from us, as if it is some object floating out there that we must chase. That belief creates anxiety, because if money is separate, it can disappear. It can be taken. It can abandon us. But when you begin to see money as consciousness crystallized, as energy choosing to move through channels of value, then something softens. The fear eases. You stop chasing and start aligning. I remember a time when I was desperate, clinging to every penny. I believed that if I just held on tighter, maybe security would finally arrive. But what actually happened was the opposite. The tighter I clenched, the more suffocated I felt, and the less flow seemed to come. It was only when I began to see money as energy, something that needed to move, to circulate, to breathe, that the flow returned, like air in the lungs. It cannot serve you if you hold it forever. You must let it move in and out. You must trust that the next breath will be there. And that is what money is meant to be: circulation. When you give, when you spend, when you invest wisely, you are not losing anything. You are participating in the dance of energy. The flow out creates space for the flow in. Just as a garden cannot thrive if water is dammed up in one corner, your life cannot thrive if you treat money as a static possession. It is meant to move. It is meant to carry consciousness from one place to another, weaving lives together through exchange. This shift in perception does not make the challenges vanish overnight. You will still have bills to pay, responsibilities to meet, but it changes how you meet them. Instead of seeing a bill as proof of lack, you can begin to see it as evidence of value received. Electricity that lit your nights, food that nourished your body, shelter that kept you safe. Gratitude replaces resentment, and with that gratitude, the energy of money begins to change its tone. When you understand money as crystallized consciousness, you also begin to understand your role more deeply. You are not a beggar waiting for scraps. You are a participant in an endless act of creation. You have the ability to crystallize your own attention into form, through work, through service, through presence, and the more clearly you align with that creative power, the more naturally money flows as its reflection. So perhaps the question isn't, how do I get more money, but how am I focusing my consciousness? What am I creating? Where am I giving my attention? Because attention, when organized and expressed, always finds its way back into your hands, often in the form we call money. And here is the quiet truth. When you begin to treat money not as a thing, but as a movement of life itself, your relationship with it softens. Fear loosens its grip. You stop feeling like a prisoner chained to scarcity and begin to feel like a participant in the wider current of creation. You realize that money, like you, is alive. It is energy, seeking expression, seeking flow, seeking to serve. And the moment you honor it in this way, it begins to honor you in return. 2. Asking frequency versus pulling frequency. There's a subtle line between asking and receiving, and many of us spend years caught on the wrong side of it without even realizing. For most of my life, I lived in the asking frequency. It sounded harmless enough. Saying prayers, repeating affirmations, quietly whispering into the night. Please, let me have enough. Please let things work out. On the surface, it looked like hope, but inside, it was born out of fear. Asking, at its root, carried the vibration of lack. It was my way of admitting to the universe, I don't have, so I need. And here's the challenge. The universe is not a parent dangling gifts above us, waiting to see if we beg hard enough. It is a mirror. It reflects back the vibration we hold most consistently. When I stood in the energy of not having Lauterbau, life simply echoed it. More empty hands, more closed doors, more reminders of the gap between where I was and where I longed to be. Think of it like standing on opposite sides of a river. When you say, I don't have you are standing here, and money, or love, or health, stands over there, and the very act of asking reinforces the gap. Every time you plead, you unknowingly build the bridge of separation even longer. That is the trap of the asking frequency. It makes you believe you are reaching out, but in truth, you are pushing away. Pulling frequency is different. It doesn't begin with emptiness. It begins with wholeness. It is not the child pressing its face against the candy store window. It is the baker inside, already holding the bread, calling it into form with calm assurance. Pulling frequency is the quiet inner state that says, I am already that which I seek. I am simply allowing it to take shape in my experience. When you live in pulling frequency, the separation dissolves. You stop seeing yourself as someone outside of abundance, straining to enter. Instead, you realize abundance is woven into your very being. You stop reaching toward money, and instead, you feel into the truth that money has always been a current already flowing around you. Your task is not to manufacture it, but to tune to it, like adjusting a radio until the static fades and the music comes through. I remember the first time I truly felt this shift. I had been in a season of scarcity, detspeeled, opportunities few. My instinct was to beg, to ask for help from life itself. But I was tired. Something in me let go. Instead of whispering, please, let it come, I breathed and said, it is already here. I am already in the stream of provision. It wasn't a sentence rehearsed. It was a surrender. And slowly, life began to mirror that. A small opportunity came. Then another. Conversations led to possibilities I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't magic. It was resonance. Pulling frequency doesn't mean you deny your circumstances. It means you no longer define yourself by them. You may have $10 in your account, but in the pulling frequency, you stop vibrating. I only have 10. Instead, you vibrate. I am aligned with wealth, and that alignment has a way of bending reality toward it. Just as a magnet pulls metal filings without effort. Here's another way to see it. Asking frequency is like a clenched fist. It's tense, reaching, closed. Pulling frequency is like an open palm, relaxed, receptive, confident that what is meant to land will land. One repels, the other attracts. The irony is that many of us believe asking is the path of faith, but true faith is pulling, standing in the unseen as if it is already real. Asking says, I don't yet believe. Pulling says, I know. And the universe, being the perfect mirror, reflects that knowing into form. So if you find yourself begging life for change, pause. Notice the vibration underneath the words. Is it rooted in lack or in wholeness, because the shift you seek is not far. It is as close as unclenching your fist, as simple as remembering that you and abundance are not two things. When you move from asking to pulling, the gap closes. What once felt far away begins to feel natural, inevitable, even effortless. And maybe that is the quiet invitation of this moment, to stop saying, "I don't have, so I need," and to begin whispering, "I am already whole, and what belongs to me is finding its way." When you rest in that truth, you are no longer a seeker at the window. You are the one inside the store, already at home, simply welcoming what is yours into view. 3. Coherent assumption. The power of unified being. There is a quiet strength that comes when every part of you finally agrees. Most of us live fractured lives without even noticing. Our thoughts say one thing. Our emotions whisper another. Our bodies tense in protest. And our energy field trembles with uncertainty. It's like an orchestra with every musician playing a different tune. No matter how hard they try, the sound is disharmony. That's why so many prayers, affirmations, and efforts to manifest fall flat. You may speak the words, "I am abundant," but if your body is knotted with fear, if your emotions tremble with doubt, and if your energy still radiates lack, the field hears the discord. The song you're singing isn't abundance. It's contradiction. Coherent assumption means alignment. It means thought, emotion, body, and energy, singing the same song, together, as if the truth you desire is already here. It's not about pretending or forcing belief. It's about entering a state so whole, so resonant, that your entire being hums with the vibration of, "It is already true." When you touch that state, asking becomes irrelevant. You don't beg for what you already are. You simply attract it, like a magnet effortlessly drawing metal filings. I remember a season of my life when I was desperate for change. I repeated affirmations until my throat ached, wrote goals until the ink ran dry. Yet inside, a voice kept whispering, "This isn't real. You're lying to yourself." And in truth, I was. My mind said yes, but my body said no. My lips said I was wealthy, but my chest carried the heavy knot of fear every time I opened my bank account. My energy field radiated that tension out into the world, and the universe, always faithful to mirror, reflected it back. The shift came not when I repeated louder, but when I learned to soften. Instead of shouting, "I am abundant," I began asking my body, "Can you relax into the idea of being supported?" Instead of demanding my heart to believe, I sat quietly until I could feel what peace might taste like if money truly flowed. And slowly, my system came into coherence. The thoughts, the feelings, the body, the field, one by one, they aligned, and when that happened, opportunities arrived without struggle, without manipulation, without endless asking. They came because I had finally become a magnet, not a beggar. Think of it like planting a seed. If you plant but doubt, you'll dig it up every day to check if it's growing, disturbing its roots until it withers. That's incoherence. Your action says yes, but your doubt says no. Coherent assumption, however, is planting the seed and resting in the certainty that growth is already happening beneath the soil. You water it, you give it sunlight, but you no longer ask, "Will it grow?" You know, and that knowing is what draws life to it. In practical terms, coherence feels like relief. You'll know you've reached it because the inner tension dissolves. There's no straining, no hoping, no begging. Instead, there's a quiet exhale, a settling in the heart, a relaxation in the body that says, "This is already mine. I don't need to chase it." And from that place, you'll notice that reality begins to bend. People call, doors open, the right words fall into your lap. It's not coincidence. It's resonance. So how do you step into coherent assumption? Not by force, but by presence. Begin small. Instead of trying to believe in millions of dollars, ask yourself what it would feel like to be supported today. Let your body relax into that image. Let your emotions taste the peace of it. Let your thoughts rest in the possibility. With time, the alignment deepens, and the song becomes clear. Because when your entire being sings the same note, the universe does not resist. It harmonizes. Consciousness always creates its own reflection. And when your consciousness is coherent, the world has no choice but to mirror it back. This is why coherent assumption is not just a practice, but a way of being. It's learning to live as though what you seek is already true, until eventually, you realize it always was. 4. A simple practice. From chasing money to creating value. For most of my life, the question that lived on my lips was the same one that haunts so many. How do I get more money? It felt like a reasonable question. After all, bills don't pay themselves, and responsibilities keep knocking at the door, whether you're ready or not. But what I didn't see then was that the very question itself kept me trapped. Every time I asked, "How do I get money?" I was declaring that I didn't already have it. I was standing in the frequency of lack, hoping that somehow the answer would carry me into abundance. But the truth I discovered later, through both hardship and quiet reflection, is that money was never the real question. Money is not the source, it is the echo. It is not the root, it is the fruit. And if you spend your life reaching only for fruit, you may taste sweetness for a moment, but you will always be hungry again tomorrow. The deeper question, the one that changes everything, is this: how can I create value in such a way that money naturally flows to me? This question is powerful because it turns your gaze away from the empty hands you fear and toward the creative power you already hold. It is like standing in a dark room and suddenly realizing the switch has been under your fingers all along. You stop asking for light to arrive from the outside, and you simply turn on what was already within. When you ask, "How do I create value?" your mind begins to see differently. Opportunities you once overlooked suddenly reveal themselves. The neighbor who needs help, the project you've been postponing, the talent you've been hiding, all of them start to whisper to you. They were always there, waiting, but you could not see them while you were locked in the vibration of lack. It's as if your inner eyes were closed, and this simple shift in question helps them open. I can recall a time when I was struggling to pay rent, filled with anxiety, circling the same thought: I need more money. I need more money. The more I repeated it, the heavier I felt. One night, out of exhaustion, I changed the question. Instead of "how do I get," I asked, "What value can I create right now?" The shift was small but profound. Suddenly, I remembered a skill I had neglected, a person I could help, a service I could offer. The next morning, I reached out with that offering, not as a desperate plea, but as a genuine act of service, and within days, an opportunity arose that carried not only money, but also a sense of meaning. That's the secret this question carries. It opens the door to both abundance and purpose. Money arrives, yes, but it comes as a companion to your creativity and contribution. It flows not because you forced it, but because you aligned with the way money naturally moves toward value. When you focus only on getting life contracts, you grow tense, guarded, and small. But when you focus on giving value, life expands, creativity flows, ideas spark, and doors open that you didn't even know existed. The energy shifts from grasping to offering, from fear to possibility. This does not mean you must sacrifice yourself or give until you are empty. Creating value is not about depleting yourself. It is about aligning with the natural rhythm of life, which is circulation. When a tree bears fruit, it is not diminished by its offering. In fact, it grows stronger, more deeply rooted, more capable of bearing even greater harvests in the next season. So too with you. Each time you give from a place of aligned value, you strengthen your connection to abundance. And so, the invitation is simple. Change the question. The next time you feel the weight of bills or the fear of lack pressing in, pause it. Instead of asking, "How do I get more money?" ask softly, "How might I create value today in a way that money naturally comes?" Sit with it. Let it settle in your body. And notice how the energy shifts, how the heaviness of desperation begins to give way to the lightness of possibility. Because the truth is, money has always been looking for a place to flow. And when you become a vessel of value, you stop chasing and you start receiving. 5. The peace of pulling frequency. When anxiety about money fades, there is a kind of exhaustion that settles into the soul when money feels like a constant chase. I know it well. Nights staring at the ceiling, replaying every bill in my mind, the weight of deadlines pressing on my chest, the restless cycle of fear. Will it be enough? What if it all runs out? That fear has a sharp edge. It cuts into your sleep, your relationships, even your ability to enjoy the simplest of things. And for years, I thought this fear was unavoidable, just part of being alive in a world that runs on money. But something changes when you step into the pulling frequency. It's as if the inner storm finally runs out of thunder. The clouds begin to part, and for the first time in a long time, you can breathe. Instead of obsessively asking, "Where will the money come from?" you begin to carry an inner knowing. It is already coming, because I am aligned with the flow that generates it. That knowing does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives with peace. Anxiety dissolves not because the numbers in your account instantly skyrocket, but because you no longer define yourself by them. You begin to see money for what it is, a reflection, not your identity. And when you release the grip of fear, your body softens. The constant tension in your shoulders loosens. Your heartbeat steadies. Life starts to feel less like a battlefield and more like a river, flowing, carrying, supporting. When you live in this state, something remarkable happens. Opportunities reveal themselves in places you once overlooked. They were always there, scattered across your path, but fear made you blind to them. Fear narrows your vision, like walking through the world with a clenched fist covering your eyes. Peace, however, opens that fist. Suddenly, you notice the conversations, the connections, the small doors opening at the edges of your awareness. What once felt like coincidence, you now recognize as alignment. I remember a season when my mind was consumed by worry. No matter how hard I worked, I couldn't seem to get ahead. Every thought revolved around what I lacked. But when I began to rest in pulling frequency, even before my external situation changed, I noticed something inside me shift. I stopped panicking every time I checked my balance. Instead, I began to ask, what value am I bringing today? How can I trust this moment more deeply? Within weeks, I was having conversations with people who offered opportunities I never could have planned. Work appeared that matched my skills perfectly. It felt less like I was forcing doors open, and more like they were quietly swinging toward me. This is the essence of the pulling frequency: calm confidence, not arrogance, not blind optimism, but a deep trust in the natural laws of life. Just as the seasons turn, just as the sun rises without your effort, financial flow arrives when you align with creation rather than wrestle with it. That trust creates space for clarity, and clarity makes room for action. Peaceful, deliberate, inspired action that naturally draws support. Living this way does not mean you will never face challenges. Life will still bring moments that test you. But even in those moments, the inner atmosphere is different. Instead of spiraling into panic, you meet the challenge with steadiness. You know that the storm is temporary, and that opportunities often hide in the very heart of the struggle. Fear contracts, but confidence expands. And in that expansion, solutions emerge. The miracle is not that pulling frequency suddenly makes money rain from the sky. The miracle is that you no longer live as a prisoner of fear. You move through the same world, but with open eyes and a steady heart, you discover that opportunities were never scarce. They were simply invisible when you vibrated with lack. Now, with peace as your compass, you see them shining everywhere. So if money has become the source of endless anxiety in your life, take this to heart. Peace is not waiting for a larger paycheck. Peace begins the moment you release the belief that you are separate from abundance. When you live in pulling frequency, you discover that safety and possibility were here all along. And in that quiet recognition, life begins to show you doors you never thought were there. Doors that open effortlessly when you stop trying to force them, and instead allow yourself to walk through with calm confidence. 6. Money as a message from the universe. There was a time when I thought money was a scorecard. The more I had, the more it proved I was smart, capable, maybe even worthy. And when I didn't have it, I carried the heavy shame of believing I had somehow failed. Perhaps you know that feeling too. The quiet sense of comparison, looking at others who seem to have more, and wondering what they did right that you did not. But life has a softer truth to offer. Money is not applause. It does not crown you as successful or condemn you as unworthy. Money, in its deepest sense, is a message from the universe. It is not saying, you are good. It is saying, you are creating something of use. You are adding value. You are aligned with a flow that serves. This perspective changes everything. Suddenly, money stops being a judgment and starts being feedback. It is like the fruit that grows on a tree. The apple does not appear to tell the tree it is better than the others. It appears because the tree has roots in the soil, branches in the sun, and has lived true to its nature. In the same way, when money flows into your life, it is not declaring that you are superior. It is showing that you are participating in the circulation of life, that you are giving and receiving in harmony. When I began to see money this way, a weight lifted from my heart. Instead of chasing it as proof of my worth, I began to listen to it as a guide. If money was scarce, it wasn't because I was broken. It was because something in my way of creating was misaligned. Perhaps I wasn't fully showing up. Perhaps I was holding back a gift. Or perhaps I was giving from fear, rather than from the deep well of service. Scarcity became less of a punishment and more of a signal. Look again, align again, create differently. And when money did flow, I stopped treating it as a prize to hoard and began treating it as a whisper of encouragement. The universe was saying, yes, keep going. This contribution matters. This direction is fruitful. In that sense, every dollar became less about possession and more about communication. The numbers in my account were like road signs on a journey, pointing me toward paths where my energy, my service, my gifts could thrive. Imagine for a moment you are sailing. The wind in your sails is not proof that you are a great sailor. It is proof that you have aligned your boat with the current of the air. Money is like that wind. When it fills your sails, it is life telling you that your alignment is correct, that your actions, your attention, your creativity are catching the current of value that moves through the world. The relief in this perspective is profound. You no longer need to measure your worth by the size of your paycheck. Worth is something you carried long before money existed. Instead, you begin to see money as a reflection of how clearly you are expressing that worth in ways the world can receive. It does not diminish your essence if the flow is small for a season. Just as a tree is no less a tree in winter, when its branches are bare, the essence is still intact. The seasons change. The fruits return. So perhaps the invitation is to listen differently. When money is absent, do not hear the universe saying, "You are nothing." Hear it saying, "Look deeper, adjust, bring forth more of your true self." And when money is present, do not hear it saying, "You are better than others." Hear it saying, "You are useful. You are aligned." Keep offering this gift. When you understand money as a message instead of a measure, you free yourself from the endless chase for validation. You begin to trust the cycles, to honor the feedback, and to lean more deeply into what truly matters: the creation of value, the sharing of gifts, the alignment with purpose. And in doing so, you discover a quiet truth. Money was never your master. It was always your messenger. 7. Financial challenges as a cleansing. There are moments in life when everything seems to collapse at once. The bills stacking higher than your courage, the work drying up, the unexpected emergencies that arrive like storms in the night. I've walked through those nights myself, when the silence was heavy and the weight of not knowing what tomorrow would bring sat in my chest like a stone. It is easy, in those moments, to believe the universe has turned its back. Easy to think you are being punished, abandoned, or left behind. But with time, and only after walking through the fire, I began to see those dark valleys differently. Financial challenges, as cruel as they feel in the moment, are often a kind of cleansing. They strip away what is false, what is fragile, what is built on fear. They expose the beliefs we cling to without even realizing. The belief that our worth is tied to numbers, that security comes only from control, that scarcity is our natural condition. When the foundation cracks, the truth has a chance to emerge. It is as if the universe, in its strange mercy, sometimes allows the walls we built around ourselves to fall, not to destroy us, but to free us. Because as long as you carry the weight of those limiting beliefs, there is no space for abundance to move in. Scarcity patterns are like clutter filling a room. Prosperity cannot enter until something is cleared. I remember one particular season when everything I had leaned on gave way. I lost a stream of income I thought was secure. At first, I panicked. I doubled down on fear, grasped at anything I could, tried to hold tighter, but the more I clutched, the emptier my hands felt. Only when I finally stopped, when I surrendered and allowed myself to feel the loss without resistance, did something new stir. In the quiet after the storm, I saw how much of my identity had been tied to control. I realized I had been living with the belief that life could abandon me at any moment, and that fear shaped every choice I made. Losing what I thought was secure forced me to confront that belief head on, and in releasing it, I opened a door for a new kind of flow, one that was lighter, freer, and not bound to fear. Financial struggles, then, are not always signs of failure. They can be initiations. They test the old structures of thought and expose their weakness. They invite us to loosen our grip on what was never truly safe, and to step into the deeper trust that abundance comes not from clinging, but from aligning. It is not an easy lesson. It is not a lesson you learn once and never again. But each time you pass through such a trial, you emerge more resilient, more clear, more spacious inside. Think of it like the forest after a fire. At first, the destruction looks final, cruel, trees blackened, soil scarred. But within weeks, tiny shoots of green begin to emerge. Seeds that could not sprout under the thick canopy suddenly find space to grow. The fire, though devastating, becomes the very condition for new life. Financial challenges often play that same role in our lives. They burn away what cannot last, so that what is truer, stronger, and more abundant can take root. So, if you are walking through such a season right now, know this: you are not being punished. You are being cleansed. You are being invited to release beliefs that no longer serve you. It may feel brutal, but trust that beneath the ashes, new growth is preparing. Scarcity is not your destiny. It is simply the soil being turned so that prosperity can take root. And when that new life comes, and it will, you will carry a strength you did not have before. You will no longer fear the loss of what was never real security. You will know, in your bones, that abundance flows not from what you hold, but from who you are. 8. Wealth generator, becoming a source of value. There is a quiet shift that takes place when you stop living as a consumer and begin to live as a creator. For much of my life, I saw myself as someone who needed to grasp what was already out there. I looked at the world as a pie of limited slices. If I wanted more, it meant someone else would have less. This belief made me cling to every opportunity, guard every dollar, and approach life with a kind of hunger that was never satisfied. But eventually, through both failure and reflection, I learned a truth that changed everything. Real wealth does not come from taking LBR, but from generating. When you create more value than you consume, you step into a different role. You stop being someone who is forever at the mercy of circumstances, and you become a source, a well that money and resources naturally flow toward. Think about it like a garden. A consumer waits for the harvest, hoping someone else will plant and water so they can eat. But a generator tends the soil, plants the seeds, and nurtures life into being. At first, the work is unseen. The soil looks bare, and it may feel as though nothing is happening. But given time, the garden produces more than the gardener could ever consume alone. The abundance spills over, feeding not just the gardener, but others as well. When you live as a wealth generator, money becomes a natural byproduct, not the primary pursuit. People are drawn to value, the way bees are drawn to flowers. It is not forced. It is inevitable. And the more genuine the value you create, the more effortless the flow becomes. I recall a period when I was trapped in survival thinking. Every effort I made was aimed at getting more hours, more jobs, more quick returns. The harder I chased, the thinner life felt. Then, almost out of desperation, I began asking a different question. What can I create that would outlive the moment? What can I offer that continues to give even when I am not present? That small change opened a door. Instead of grasping, I began building. Instead of consuming, I began generating. And slowly, almost quietly, money began to arrive. Not because I demanded it, but because people could feel the value and were willing to exchange for it. The beauty of being a wealth generator is that it dissolves the fear of scarcity. You no longer wait with anxious hands, hoping someone else will provide. You know that within you lies the capacity to create, to contribute, to bring forth something new. That knowing is liberating. It means that even when one door closes, you can build another. Even when resources seem thin, you can draw from your well of creativity, service, and presence. And here's the paradox when you stop obsessing over money and focus instead on value. Money often multiplies far beyond what chasing it could have achieved. Because money, at its core, follows value. It seeks out usefulness, beauty, service, innovation, compassion. It flows toward what supports life. And when you become a generator of those things, money cannot help but move in your direction. This doesn't mean you have to create grand inventions or world-shaking movements. Generating wealth can be as simple as showing up with excellence in the work already before you, or offering your unique perspective in a way that lifts someone else. It can mean refining a skill until it shines, or serving with such sincerity that people feel enriched simply by being near you. Value is not always measured in scale. It is measured in authenticity. So perhaps the question for you is this: are you consuming more than you create? Or are you generating more than you consume? The answer is not meant to bring shame, but awareness. Because the moment you choose to become a generator, the tide shifts. You step out of scarcity's shadow and into abundance's light. In the end, to be a wealth generator is to live in harmony with the natural law of circulation. The ocean does not hoard its waves. It generates them endlessly. The sun does not ration its light. It pours it out, knowing there will always be more. When you create more than you consume, and you join this rhythm, and in doing so, you discover that wealth is not something you chase. It is something you generate, naturally, inevitably, as an expression of who you are. 9. A morning practice. Asking what value you can create today. Mornings carry a kind of quiet honesty. Before the noise of the day rushes in, before the phone calls, the emails, the endless demands, there is a brief moment where the soul can still be heard. For years, I spent those moments in worry. I would wake with a knot in my stomach, already running through the numbers, already anxious about what I didn't have. The first question on my lips was always some version of, how will I get through this day? How will I make enough? It took me a long time to learn that those first thoughts of the day are not trivial. They set the tone, they tune the frequency, and when the frequency is fear, the whole day bends under its weight. But when the frequency shifts to creation, everything begins to open. That is why I began a new practice, one so simple, it almost feels foolish at first. Each morning, instead of asking, how do I get more money, I ask, what value can I create today? This is not a strategy to trick the universe. It is not a clever technique to squeeze out results. It is a way of remembering who you are before the world tries to tell you otherwise. Because deep down, you are not here just to survive. You are here to create, to contribute, to let something flow through you that was not here before. When I first began this practice, the answers that came were small. One morning, the thought was simply, call a friend you've been avoiding and listen. Another morning, it was, finish that small task you've been postponing. Sometimes it was as ordinary as showing up fully at my work desk, not halfway present, but wholeheartedly there. None of it looked like a direct path to more money. But when I followed those nudges, something surprising happened. Opportunities started weaving themselves together. People responded, projects moved forward, and slowly, I noticed that financial flow was appearing in places I hadn't even considered. That is the hidden power of this practice. It shifts you out of desperation and into alignment. Instead of grasping for results, you become a participant in the creative intelligence that is always moving through life. You are no longer asking, what can I take? But rather, what can I offer? And when you live in that state, money often follows, not as a bribe, but as a natural consequence of value being born through you. There is also something profoundly healing in the way this question engages the body. When you sit quietly in the morning and ask, what value can I create today? Don't force your mind to provide a quick answer. Let the question drop down deeper, into the chest, into the belly. Notice how your body responds. Sometimes a warmth rises. Sometimes an image flashes. Sometimes just a small tug of curiosity toward one action. That is your intuition speaking. That is your alignment, guiding you. And here's the truth. You don't need to create something grand every day. Value does not always look like launching a business or inventing a breakthrough. Value can be kindness, presence, sincerity. A nurse holding the hand of a frightened patient creates value. A teacher staying an extra 5 minutes after class to encourage a struggling student creates value. Even a smile offered to a stranger in the grocery line creates value. Though you may never see how far that ripple extends. When you make this your morning practice, you step into the day with a different posture. You are no longer bracing against the world. You are leaning into it with open hands. You are saying, I trust that what flows through me today matters, and I will give it with sincerity. That shift softens the fear, loosens the grip of scarcity, and invites abundance to move where fear once blocked it. So tomorrow morning, when you open your eyes, pause before the rush takes you. Ask softly, what value can I create today? And then listen, not just with your mind, but with your whole being. Follow the small impulses. Trust the gentle pulls. Over time, you will see that this simple practice does more than change your mornings. It changes your life. It teaches you that abundance was never about asking for more. It was about remembering that you were always a vessel of value, and that through you, wealth naturally finds its way into the world. 10. Voluntary evolution. Choosing to grow before life forces you. Life has a way of teaching us, whether we are willing or not. If we ignore the small whispers, the lessons eventually arrive as storms. I've lived long enough to know that waiting for the storm is painful. Financial struggles, health crises, broken relationships. These are often the universe's louder ways of inviting us to release what no longer serves us. But there is another path, a softer one. It is what I call voluntary evolution, the choice to grow before life pushes us. Voluntary evolution means pausing long enough to notice the patterns that quietly shape your days. It is the decision to look honestly at the old beliefs you've been carrying, beliefs inherited from family, from society, from your own fears, and to ask, is this still true for me? Is this serving my life? When you take the time to ask those questions each month, you give yourself the gift of clarity. You no longer wait for financial collapse to show you that scarcity is a lie, or for deep exhaustion to prove that overworking is not the way. You choose to release. Gently, consistently, piece by piece. I remember a time when I believed that money only came through struggle. It was a belief carved into me by years of watching people I loved work themselves to the bone. Always tired, always fearful of not having enough. I carried that belief like a badge of honor. I thought suffering was proof of worthiness, but that belief kept me chained to exhaustion. Month after month, I asked myself, what is one pattern I can release? In 1 month, it was the belief that I must struggle to deserve abundance. Letting it go didn't happen overnight, but by naming it, by noticing it every time it crept back, I loosened its hold, and slowly, I began to taste a new truth. That joy and abundance are not opposites, but companions. This practice doesn't require grand gestures. You don't need to transform your life all at once. It is more like clearing a room that has been cluttered for years. Each month, you pick one corner, one shelf, one drawer. You hold the objects, your habits, your thoughts, your assumptions, and you decide what to keep and what to let go. Over time, the space becomes lighter, the air feels easier to breathe, and into that space, new life can flow. Sometimes, the beliefs we discover are subtle. Maybe it's the habit of undercharging for your work, born from the hidden fear that you are not worth more. Maybe it's the reflex of saying yes to every request, even when it drains you, because somewhere inside you believe that love must be earned by self-sacrifice. Maybe it's the compulsion to spend impulsively whenever stress rises, because comfort feels safer than clarity. Each of these patterns closes the door a little more on abundance. Voluntary evolution is about gently opening that door again. And the key word here is gently. This is not about condemning yourself or waging war on your habits. It is about sitting with them like old friends, asking what they were trying to protect you from. Often, the very patterns that block abundance were born from a desire to keep you safe. Scarcity thinking might have been your way of bracing against disappointment. Overworking might have been your way of proving your worth in a world that didn't always see it. When you meet these parts of yourself with compassion instead of judgment, you can thank them for their service and invite them to step aside. That is how lasting change takes root, not through force, but through tenderness. Voluntary evolution is not about perfection. It is about choosing presence over autopilot. It is about saying, I will not wait for crisis to teach me. I will learn now. with open eyes and open heart. Each month, as you release even one small limiting belief, you expand your capacity for abundance. The universe does not need you to be flawless. It needs you to be available. And availability is what grows when you clear away the clutter of fear. So let this be your quiet commitment, once a month. Sit with yourself. Ask gently, what belief am I ready to release? What habit no longer reflects the person I am becoming? And then, take one small step toward letting it go. It may be writing it down and burning the paper. It may be speaking a new truth aloud. It may be choosing differently, just once, and noticing how it feels. These small acts, repeated with sincerity, create a life that evolves not through force, but through choice. And in that choice, abundance finds space to enter. Because when you grow voluntarily, you no longer wait for life to push you into awakening. You walk toward it, step by step, with tenderness, with courage, with love. 11. Wealth magnetism. Becoming a living magnet of value. There is a quiet transformation that occurs when you shift your question from "what can I take" to "what can I give?" For years, I walked into rooms with the silent hunger of needing something: approval, opportunity, income, recognition. People could feel it, even if I never said a word. That subtle energy of grasping makes others step back. It is not because they are unkind, but because lack repels. We can sense when someone is reaching out to take, and our instincts naturally create distance. But everything changed when I began to enter situations with a different posture, a different question. What can I offer here? What can I contribute to this person? To this moment? To this space? The energy shifted, not only within me, but around me. Instead of feeling like a beggar at the table of life, I became a host. Instead of waiting for doors to open, people began inviting me in. And it wasn't because I was more talented or more deserving, but because giving makes you magnetic. Wealth magnetism is not a trick or a manipulation. It is the natural response to authentic presence. When you bring value, when you carry the quiet confidence of someone who knows they have something to share, people lean toward you. They want to support you, collaborate with you, trust you, and opportunities, which once felt so scarce, begin appearing in ways that feel almost effortless. It is the same way flowers attract bees. The flower does not chase or beg. It simply blooms, offering its fragrance and nectar, and in doing so, it becomes irresistible. The bees arrive, not because the flower demanded it, but because value offered freely is value that calls forth a response. You are no different. When you show up each day asking, how can I give? How can I serve? How can I make this moment richer for someone else? You become like that flower, alive, radiant, and naturally magnetic. I recall a time when I walked into a business meeting with the usual hunger. How do I get this deal? How do I convince them? My words were polished, my pitch well rehearsed, but the energy underneath was desperation. And it didn't land. The opportunity slipped away. A year later, I found myself in a similar room, but with a different spirit. I entered not with the need to take, but with the desire to ask, what do these people truly need? How can I make their lives easier, their vision clearer? The conversation unfolded with ease. I wasn't performing. I was participating. By the end, they were not only eager to work with me, they were offering more than I had expected. That was wealth magnetism at work. This magnetism extends far beyond money. It touches relationships, health, even the way you experience community. Because when you move with the energy of giving, you carry light. People feel it. They feel seen, valued, uplifted in your presence. And naturally, they want to remain close. They want to give back, not out of obligation, but out of joy. That reciprocity creates a flow, and within that flow, abundance is no longer something you chase. It is something that gathers around you. The beautiful part is that this doesn't require you to be extraordinary. You don't need to invent something groundbreaking or deliver speeches to thousands. Wealth magnetism is cultivated in the simple, daily acts of asking, "What can I give?" It may be offering your full attention in a conversation. It may be using your skills to solve a problem that no one else noticed. It may be sharing encouragement at just the right time. Value is not always loud or grand. It is often quiet, but deeply felt. So each time you meet someone, pause and listen within. What do I have to give here? Not how can I protect myself, or what can I get out of this, but what gift of presence, service, or skill can I leave behind? When that question becomes the rhythm of your interactions, you will find yourself surrounded by opportunities, supported by allies, and nourished by flows of abundance that seem to come from every direction. Because wealth magnetism is not about money chasing you. It is about you becoming a living source of value. And when you radiate value, money, people, and opportunities cannot help but be drawn into your orbit. 12. Quantum wealth consciousness. When money becomes a reflection, not a pursuit. There comes a point in the journey when money stops being the center of the story. For so long, it feels like the sun around which everything else orbits. Your decisions, your opportunities, even your sense of worth. But there is a deeper stage of awareness, one I can only describe as quantum wealth consciousness. This is the place where money is no longer the goal. It becomes a quiet echo, a natural reflection of something much more essential, living in alignment with your purpose. I did not arrive here quickly. For many years, money was the measure of everything. If it was plentiful, I felt secure. If it was scarce, I felt small, anxious, less than. My mood rose and fell with the numbers on a screen. But over time, through disappointments and slow awakenings, I discovered that true wealth had little to do with numbers. It had everything to do with alignment, with how faithfully I was living, the mission that life placed in me. Quantum wealth consciousness is not about ignoring money or pretending it doesn't matter. It is about placing it in its proper role. Money becomes feedback, not identity. It becomes a mirror that reflects how well you are walking your path, how much of your creative spirit you are allowing to flow through you. It is no longer a master you serve, but a companion that signals, yes, you are in harmony. Keep going. At this level of awareness, your energy shifts. Instead of waking each day asking, "How can I make money?" you wake asking, "How can I live my purpose more fully today? How can I express the truth of who I am in service to the world?" And when you do, money arrives. Not as a desperate scramble, but as a natural byproduct, like shadows that follow you when you walk in the sun. Money follows those who walk in purpose. I remember a time when I began focusing deeply on a project that felt aligned with my heart. It wasn't glamorous, and at first, it didn't look profitable, but I poured myself into it because it felt right, because it carried meaning. Weeks later, doors opened I never expected. Support arrived, opportunities appeared, and yes, money flowed. Not because I had chased it, but because I had shifted into alignment. The money was simply life's way of nodding back to me, whispering, "Yes, this matters. Keep creating." This way of living dissolves so much of the stress that shadows our relationship with money. You no longer see yourself as a beggar at the universe's door, hoping for scraps. You realize you are a co-creator, a participant in a vast field of intelligence that wants to express itself through you. And when you give yourself permission to live from that space of creativity and authenticity, wealth becomes inevitable. Quantum wealth consciousness also teaches us that abundance is not linear. It doesn't come only from effort or hours. It flows in unexpected ways, through synchronicities, through connections, through invisible hands that seem to guide resources toward you when you are aligned. This doesn't mean you sit idle. It means your action is inspired, supported by a deeper current. You work, but you no longer grind yourself to exhaustion. You create, but it feels like breathing rather than straining. The greatest freedom of this consciousness is that money loses its power to define you. Whether you hold much or little, your sense of self is steady, because you know that wealth is not measured by possessions, but by presence. It is measured by how aligned you are with your soul's mission, by how much joy and meaning you allow into each moment. From that place, even a small amount of money feels rich, because it is connected to purpose, and from that place, larger amounts of money arrive naturally, because purpose magnetizes support. So if you find yourself still tangled in the chase for money, take heart. The chase ends when you remember why you are here, not to accumulate endlessly, but to create, to serve, to express life itself through your being. And when you step into that truth, money becomes what it was always meant to be: a reflection, not a pursuit. It is the universe's quiet affirmation that you are living your mission, and that in doing so, you are already rich. 13. Time and patience. The season of abundance. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn about abundance is that it rarely arrives on our timetable. We live in a world that glorifies speed, fast results, instant gratification, overnight success. These are the stories we are sold. And so, when we begin to align with abundance, we expect it to show up tomorrow, maybe even today. When it doesn't, we panic. We doubt ourselves. We question whether the practices, the beliefs, the pulling frequency itself are working at all. But the deeper truth is, this pulling frequency is not about rushing. Abundance, like life itself, has seasons. You cannot force a seed to bloom the day after you plant it. No matter how much you water, no matter how desperately you watch the soil, the seed will follow its own rhythm. It needs time, warmth, nourishment, and patience before it breaks through into the light. And so it is with money, opportunities, and the flow of wealth. I used to believe that if I did everything right, the affirmations, the meditations, the work, results should come instantly. And when they didn't, I felt betrayed. I thought I was failing. What I couldn't see was that something was happening beneath the surface, just like a seed hidden underground. My efforts and alignment were taking root in invisible ways. The soil was shifting, the roots were forming, but because I couldn't see them yet, I assumed nothing was happening. Patience is what allows us to hold steady in that invisible season. It is the quiet trust that even if you cannot yet see the sprout, the seed is alive. It is the refusal to dig up what you planted simply because you are tired of waiting. This is why time and patience are such crucial companions to pulling frequency. Without them, you will abandon the very harvest that was already on its way. I remember one particularly difficult period when I was certain nothing was working. I had done the inner work. I had shifted into alignment, and yet the money was not appearing. Every part of me wanted to give up, but something softer inside whispered, "Wait, trust, keep tending the soil." And so, I stayed the course. I kept focusing on value, on alignment, on small daily actions. Weeks later, opportunities appeared that I could not have forced or predicted. Doors that opened not through panic, but through patience. Looking back, I see clearly if I had given up too soon, I would have walked away just before the breakthrough. Patience is not passive. It does not mean sitting idly by, doing nothing. It means moving steadily, consistently, without the frantic energy of desperation. It is showing up each day to water the seed, to nurture the soil, to keep faith alive. even when nothing seems to change. And it is knowing that life unfolds in rhythms larger than our own desires. There is a certain beauty in surrendering to those rhythms. When you trust the timing, you begin to relax into the process. Anxiety softens. You stop demanding proof every hour, and instead you learn to live in quiet confidence. That confidence itself is magnetic. It tells the universe, I am certain of my place in abundance, and I can wait as long as it takes. Ironically, it is often when you reach this state of trust that the flow begins to accelerate, because you are no longer pushing it away with doubt. So if you are walking through a season where results feel delayed, let this truth comfort you. Nothing is wasted. The roots are forming. The soil is preparing. Just because you cannot see growth yet does not mean it is absent. Time and patience are not obstacles to abundance. They are part of its very fabric, like a farmer waiting for spring. You cannot demand that the harvest come in winter, but if you trust the process, if you stay faithful, the season always changes. The buds always appear, and when they do, you will realize that every quiet day of waiting was not in vain. It was the foundation of the wealth that was always making its way to you. 14. Community and connection. The multiplication of abundance. There is a quiet truth I only learned after many years of trying to carry life on my own shoulders. Abundance grows in community. For so long, I thought the path to wealth was a solitary climb. I believed that if I worked harder, thought smarter, and outlasted everyone else, I would finally break free. But that lonely struggle only left me exhausted. Even in the seasons when money came, because money without connection feels thin. It does not nourish the heart. Over time, I began to see something simple but profound. Money, like energy, multiplies when shared. When you hold it tightly, it stagnates. But when you let it move, through generosity, collaboration, and the lifting of others, it grows in ways that no individual effort could achieve. True wealth is never built alone. It is woven through the fabric of community. Think of the way a fire burns. A single log smolders and fades quickly, but when logs are placed together, the flames leap higher, warmer, brighter. Each piece of wood feeds the other, and the fire becomes something greater than the sum of its parts. In the same way, when we choose to connect, when we share ideas, resources, encouragement, and even opportunities, the energy of abundance expands far beyond what we could generate alone. I have seen this in my own life. There were times when I was struggling, yet someone extended a hand, a piece of advice, a connection, even a small loan that gave me room to breathe. Later, when I was in a stronger position, I did the same for others. And what I noticed was that every act of support seemed to ripple back, often in unexpected ways. A person I once helped returned years later with an opportunity. A community I poured into eventually became the soil where my own work grew roots. That is the beauty of connection. What you give does not disappear. It circulates, and in circulating, it multiplies. This is not only about generosity in the material sense, it is also about emotional and spiritual generosity. When you walk into a room with the spirit of encouragement, when you genuinely want others to succeed, you become magnetic. People feel safe around you, seen by you, strengthened by you, and in that safety, they open doors. They share resources. They invite you into their flow. This is why envy and competition shrink us, while collaboration expands us. Scarcity whispers, there isn't enough. Protect yourself. Abundance whispers, there is more than enough. And together, we can create even more. Community also carries us in the seasons when our own strength falters. None of us can stand tall every day. There are moments of fear, grief, loss. In those times, connection becomes the bridge that carries us until we can walk again. And this too is abundance. the wealth of being supported, of not having to carry everything alone. Money may solve some problems, but only community can truly ease the weight of being human. When you embrace this truth, the way you see wealth changes. It is no longer only about what sits in your account. It is about the network of lives you touch and the ways they touch you back. It is about knowing that your energy, your ideas, your presence are part of a larger whole. And the larger that whole becomes, the more channels there are for abundance to reach you. So perhaps the invitation is simple. Instead of asking, "How can I gather more for myself?" ask, "How can I contribute to the flow that uplifts us all?" Because every time you do, you expand the river. You create currents that return, not as repayment, but as natural consequence. In the end, abundance is not a private victory. It is a shared reality. The wealth that endures is the wealth that circulates through hands, through hearts, through communities that refuse to let one another fall. And when you live this way, you discover a truth that no bank account can hold. Prosperity is multiplied by connection, and true richness is found not in isolation, but in the circle of lives that grow stronger together, living as the frequency of abundance. There comes a moment in every journey when you realize that asking has only kept you small. For years, I believed that if I prayed harder, worked longer, begged more sincerely, maybe life would finally answer. But each plea carried within it a hidden message: I am lacking, I don't have. And the universe, like a mirror, simply reflected that belief back to me. The harder I asked, the more distant abundance seemed. The shift began the day I stopped asking and started aligning. Abundance, I came to see, is not something to be demanded or wrestled into existence. It is something to be embodied, like a song that only plays on a certain frequency. Wealth is drawn to those who resonate with it, and resonance is not forced, it is lived. When you choose to live as the frequency of abundance, everything changes. Money ceases to be the finish line you are racing toward. It becomes the natural outcome of a deeper alignment, the alignment of living truthfully, giving authentically, and connecting wholeheartedly. It becomes the byproduct of a life that is already rich in meaning, service, and love. Think of it like breathing. You do not beg for your next breath. You do not panic about whether the air will come. You trust. And so you breathe in. And because you breathe out, space is created for the next breath to arrive. Abundance works the same way. When you embody the truth that you are already connected to the flow of life, money comes as naturally as oxygen, circulating, supporting, sustaining, without the constant fear of running out. Living in pulling frequency is not about ignoring reality. It is not about pretending bills do not exist or challenges never arise. It is about meeting those realities from a place of calm and wholeness, instead of panic and lack. It is about holding steady in the truth that scarcity is not your nature. Abundance is. And when you live from that place, even difficulties become teachers, guiding you back to alignment, reminding you of the wealth that lives within before it ever appears without. But the beauty of this truth is not only personal, it is collective. Imagine what happens when more of us stop living in desperation and start living in alignment. Imagine a world where our daily question is not, "How can I get more for myself?" but "How can I create more for all of us?" The energy of that shift would ripple outward, transforming communities, economies, even the way we see one another. Money would no longer be a weapon or a measure of worth, but a tool for building, for serving, for nurturing what matters. I have seen glimpses of this already. In circles of people who collaborate instead of compete, who lift each other rather than hoard. In those spaces, abondance multiplie. Opportunities expand beyond what any one person could have created alone. And in that multiplication, you can feel it, the world becoming richer, not just in wealth, but in connection, in creativity, in love. So let this be the invitation you carry forward. Stop asking for money as if it is something outside of you. Begin to live as the frequency that calls it naturally into your orbit. Let your life be the song that money cannot resist. Not because you are desperate, but because you are aligned. And as you do, remember this: you are not merely chasing wealth. You are embodying it. You are not waiting for permission to be abundant. You are already the source of abundance itself. The more you honor that truth, the more the world reflects it back. In time, as more hearts awaken to this frequency, the story of scarcity will lose its hold. The world will begin to reshape itself, not as a place where survival dominates, but as a place where generosity, love, and creativity are the currencies that matter most. And money, faithful as ever, will follow, not as the goal, but as the echo of a humanity finally living in harmony with itself. That is the invitation. That is the possibility. Not just for you, but for all of us,